What's up, football world? I am Bucky Brooks, and this is the Bucky Brooks Show. And today, my Jags fans are going to be excited because this is a Jags only podcast where we're just going to talk about a couple of things that we want to see cleaned up heading into training camp so this team can maximize their potential as one of the top teams in the AFC. If you don't believe me, believe FanDuel. Right now on FanDuel Sportsbook, the Jags are plus 190 to win the division. Now, for some reason, they got the Houston Texans at plus 135, which puts them over the Jags. And then you got the Colts and the Titans coming in behind the Jags. But right now, I want to focus on the Jags at that plus 190. And I want to talk about why they're going to defy those odds, because if they clean up these issues, this team is going to be hard to stop going forward. This season is interesting because coming into the second year of Liam Cohen's tenure, this team has a lot of positivity coming off of the 13-4 season where we saw this team get white hot. A lot of excitement about Trevor Lawrence and how he is playing, how he played at an MVP level down the stretch, and how this offense can continue to grow under his direction. When I tap into some of my folks down in Jacksonville talking about the spring, and they were saying, hey, this is the best spring that Trevor Lawrence has had. The command, the control, the rhythm, everything when it came to the offense, he's fully grasping everything. And more importantly, he's putting his own spin on that. I think that bodes well for this team because if number 16 is comfortable, if number 16 is able to play at an MVP level, this offense is going to go to another level. And we already saw last year, they're one of the top offenses in football. If he takes it up a notch, this will be the best offense in football. But the first thing that I'm looking for heading into training camp that I just think we want to make sure that this thing is rolling is, can we get more explosives from the passing game? When I look at this passing game last year, the passing game was on fire. Trevor Lawrence, we talked about having like one of the best seasons of his career, had 4,000 pass yards, had 38 total touchdowns, was consistently able to kind of find his rhythm, particularly down the stretch, where if you look at the last 7 games of the season, Trevor Lawrence, 18 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. The offense averaged 34.4 points per game during those final 7 games. That's second in the league behind the LA Rams, who were averaging 35.1. When you think about that and you think about how we can even go to another level with another offseason and better chemistry and connectivity with his playmakers, yeah, you should be excited about what this offense could do in year 2. The thing about it, when I talk about wanting more explosives in the passing game, this team did it last year, basically playing half-court offense the entire time. They weren't able to generate the big plays. They didn't get those easy scores by throwing over the top of the defense. And that is something that they desperately want for this offense to really maximize not only what they can do with all the personnel on the field, but how they can attack the defense that ultimately is going to be geared up to stop one of a handful of players on the perimeter while also having to deal with the running game. Now, the guy who I really have my eye on when I talk about more explosives is Brian Thomas Jr. And the reason why Brian Thomas Jr. to me is a guy that can unlock the explosiveness in the passing game is because he's their most talented pass catcher. He is their most dynamic deep threat. And he's a guy that has proven that he can take the top off of a defense. You go back and you look at the stats, according to Next Gen Stats, 17 catches of 20 or more air yards, meaning they're pushing the ball down the field. He's been the recipient of those on 17 of those, but 11 of those came his rookie season. Now, that matters because that rookie season that we're talking about is one where we had 87 catches, 1,282 yards, 10 touchdowns, and he averaged 14.7 yards per catch. Last year, he had the same yards per catch average, 14.7, but he only had 2 touchdowns, and he accounted for about 707 receiving yards and had just 48 catches, not enough involvement. Now, Liam Cohen would tell you that, hey, it's not going to be like it was his rookie year because there are better playmakers around him. And the ball in this offense is going to go to the open man. There's not a designated pecking order like, hey, you're the 1, you're the 2, you're the 3. They run the plays, they run the concepts. They feel like they have a very talented receiving core where they're interchangeable parts in terms of what roles they have to play on game day. And the ball is going to find the hot guy, the guy that is open against either the coverage or the game plan the opponent is using. Well, Brian Thomas Jr., to me, of all the people that I would kind of call in that group, it's Brian Thomas Jr., Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington. You throw in Travis Hunter, and then you have Bretton Strange. Brian Thomas Jr. could and maybe would be the number one in a traditional offensive setup and design. But what we found in this system, he is at his best when he runs vertical routes and he runs outbreaking routes. Well, that might limit some of the touches that he gets in an offense where you just ask him to run outbreaking things and goes, but his effectiveness is still there. We saw down the stretch when he became more involved, he found a way to put the ball in the paint. He is the scariest of all the wide receivers to defend because his combination of athleticism, speed, explosive playmaking ability really scares defensive coordinators. And so they have to make adjustments to how they want to play if he's a guy that is prominently involved. The reason why I really believe that he will be a focal point of this offense, particularly as a designated deep threat, is because that's what he does. I told you about the 17 catches of 20 more air yards, 11 of those that he had his rookie season when he was able to put the ball in the paint and really have a breakout year as a rookie. Look, over 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, that's hard to do. Well, a lot of it is due to the deep ball. This year, there has to be a concerted effort to make sure that Brian Thomas Jr. plays the role that fits his skill set, which is push the ball down the field, out breaking routes, comebacks, those things. If he does that, he's going to have success. To me, that sounds like a natural Z playmaker where you can design it for him, you can move him around, you can put him in the slide, you can find various ways to use him to take the top off the defense, to create big play opportunities for himself, or to set the table for others working up underneath, whether it's Jacoby Myers or Parker Washington, even Travis Hunter when he's in. I love what Brian Thomas can offer as the designated deep threat, the one that everyone knows they're going to push him down the field. And if you fall asleep at the wheel, he's going to catch the deep ball and it's going to completely flip the field and light up the scoreboard. But the other person that you want to watch when it comes to the explosives, Parker Washington Jr. Now, I know they made a midseason trade to get Jacoby Myers last year. That was in the works even before the injury to Travis Hunter. But what happened last year when Travis Hunter goes out, Brian Thomas Jr. is inconsistent, not always available. Parker Washington had to step up and be a starter. And what we found from Parker Washington is, look, he's more dynamic than we thought. And he's not just pigeonholed to be a punt returner. This guy was terrific, taking swing passes, screens, crossing routes, things over the end breaking mark at intermediate range. He was terrific making things happen with those opportunities. I think he becomes an even bigger factor in the passing game this year because Trevor Lawrence trusts him. And when you've earned the trust of the starting quarterback, the ball is going to continue to go your way because he's going to raise up and throw and say, look, if I can't get a completion, I know I always can get going here. Makes a lot of sense, works for me. And the explosive plays not only have to be over the top of the defense, but maybe on some of those catch and run specials where Parker Washington is able to slip and slither through and make big plays happen. He can play a big part of it. And oh, by the way, the ultimate wild card is Travis Hunter. We saw the spectacular catch on Monday night that he made against the Kansas City Chiefs. He's back and healthy and in an assigned role that lets him kind of play that position, whether it's screen, gadget, trick play guy, something where you put him in and we only ask him to run a handful of routes and he can do that successfully, make some catches, and then use the athleticism to maybe create more. Travis Hunter is the wild card behind what I'll say Brian Thomas Jr. and Parker Washington can offer. Look for the big plays to go to those guys first, and then maybe the supporting cast afterwards will have a handful of opportunities to make it done, whether that is, look, we talked about Jacoby Myers or the other tight ends, the young tight ends that are coming in. That remains to be seen. But I do know BTJ, Parker Washington Jr., they will bring more explosives to that offense. Second part of it, and this actually plays into part one, got to be more consistent with the run game. Now, the running game is under siege and under a lot of pressure because the Jaguars decided not to re-sign Travis Etienne in the offseason. Some of that is due to just the nature of the position. He's going to be 6 years in. He's accomplished a lot. He's coming off like fantastic seasons where he thrived a little bit as the bell cow, but I can't say that he transformed the way that defensive coordinators will play the Jags and him going forward. So when the Jags decided not to pony up the significant money that he got on his offer sheet from New Orleans, what they did is they committed to, hey, we're going to do this by committee. Chris Rodriguez coming over from the Commanders, Bashaw Tootin and LaQuint Allen, guys that were taken last year know the system, know the expectations, understand the standards. They just have to level up to be ready for what we deem to be the standard going into the season. The thing about that, when we talk about like the running back by committee situation with Rodriguez, Tootin, and Allen, it just makes sure those guys get into the right roles based on their skill set. Initially, I would think that Bashar Tootin would be the guy that is more the big play threat, but he can be that. But last year, he had a tough time getting to the second and third levels because he just never had have his body under control. If he can fix that part of it, he absolutely is going to find his way to walk into the end zones on some long runs because they're just a slither through a crack away from being able to produce some of those explosives that you want to see on the ground game. But the real reason why I will say that this team is going to be much improved in the running game is because the way they finished. Last year, Travis Etienne, from week 10 through the playoffs, he had fewer than 60 rushing yards in 5 of those games. I mean, we talk about like being able to balance it up, particularly in the playoffs when, look, all the teams are good, but they all have fatal flaws. I am just surprised that this run game was not able to get unleashed consistently. Now, Travis had a great year, 1,000-yard season for him. The significant money that the New Orleans Saints paid him suggested they have a big plan for utilizing him. So hats off to him. You wish him nothing but the best. I think the Jaguars wanted a little more. They wanted a little more dynamic playmaking ability. They wanted a little more certainty when it came to the runs between the tackles. We hand the ball off, we can get 3 or 4 yards. We know that because this is what we do. They wanted some certainty when you're taking on an investment to be able to build it out the way that you want to build it correctly. So the thing about it is I've talked to you about the personnel in the backfield. I've talked to you about how the standards certainly didn't work. But I think the standards work when you have the right coach in place. And new run game coordinator, Ryan Picucci, look, he comes over from Tampa where he did a great transformation with Liam Cohen back in 2024. And the reason why it's notable because last year Cohen couldn't bring him over, right? He couldn't bring his guys over to help him kind of assemble the offensive staff. So there were some places where he probably felt like he could improve if he had the guys that shared his vision, shared his mindset for an offense. So let's go and make that happen. And so what they do is they go poach an offensive assistant from the Bucs. They name him run game coordinator. He was there in Tampa when Liam helped this offense go from 32nd, dead last in the league in rushing, to 4th in the league in rushing. And what we saw with Liam as the OC and a handful of dudes kind of playing and thriving in their roles, I mean, we saw a team that played at a very, very high level when it mattered. And when I think about the Buccaneers that year, Baker Mayfield had 40-plus touchdowns, was touted about as a little bit of a dark horse MVP candidate, and it happened because the running game was able to create these opportunities for the quarterback to thrive. In the first part of the video, I said, look, the explosive plays from the offense have to show up because it's so hard to drive the length of the field, 10 to 12 plays, nickel and diamond. But it's also just hard to come out and say, hey, we're going to be a bombs away squad. We're just going to unleash these bombs over the top of the defense and have a lot of success, especially against teams that are noted for no deep balls, make them drive the length of the field, and those things. But the way that you are able to force their hand, run the football successfully, force them to drop a defender in the box, make them play one-on-one on the outside, and then you have to be good enough on the outside to be able to win. When I look at what this is going to be offensively, look, it's going to be a hodgepodge of things. It's going to be a mix of zones. It's going to be some inside and out. I mean, it's going to be a mix of inside and outside zone. It's going to be some power and counter, traditional gap pull plays. And it's going to be a lot of physicality that is put on the opponent because this offensive line is committed to being able to run the football better. One of the things that we can look back in the past and say, hey, we didn't really go and get some of the top things that you normally have to produce a good running back. Didn't invest a first-round pick in a back. Didn't even invest like a top pick in the second round in a back that is like a guy that was underrated, overlooked, but had big boy talent, dominant talent. Didn't see that. So what they're trying to do is do it by committee with Rodriguez, Tootin, and Allen taking on various roles, but then really lean heavily into an offensive line that is more experienced, bigger, faster, stronger, and ready to impose their will. On paper, it looks great, but we won't really know until we see what Picucci does with this offense and how he elects to kind of put his own stamp on what they've done previously. That's it. And I think it's really important because you have some moves that were made. Shane Waldron goes up as an associate head coach. We talk about some other movements. Grant Udinski's there, obviously, as the offensive coordinator. But for Liam, having a support staff that knows, hey, this is the vision. This is how I want it to play out. Now, you guys with your respective positions, figure out a way to make sure that they're on board so we can go through this thing and make it happen the way that we want to make it. You don't make a jump from 32nd to 4th with not only having the tactical skills to be able to X and O and draw it up, but there's a way that you can develop the players on the grass individually and collectively to get them to play better. I think we're going to see a more consistent run game because the people around Liam are consistent and they buy into the vision that he has set forth on how he wants to play offense. Looking forward to that. Looking for a notable name, but by committee, look, I think Rodriguez, Allen, and Bashir Tootin should be able to get it done. More importantly, they're going to get it done because the coaching staff and the personnel around them will set the table for them to have a lot of success. Now, the final thing that I'm looking for when I go down to Jacksonville in a few weeks for training camp and what will be critical to this team taking the next step, better pass rushing coverage. Now, it seems simple when we talk about good defense is about taking the ball away, not giving up big plays, making sure you impose your will on the opponent. But at the end of the day, to do those things, your guys have to be disciplined and capable of winning on their own without assistance for others. Meaning, at the front line, Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, they got to be able to win their one-on-one matchups without me needing to come over and set picks and do things to incorporate others that leads to a run-through. These two guys are horses, right? They're the face of the franchise types. They're everything that the organization wants and needs from a defensive player. Big, fast, physical, tough, aggressive, has a nastiness about him the way he plays. Well, that's going to change the way the Jaguars play defense going forward, and they're going to be built for these rock'em sock'em no-bot games that eventually they'll have to deal with when the Houston Texans come to town and they go venture to H-Town to kind of squabble up and settle the division. Well, when I think about the pass rush of Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, now it's about what kind of versatility do they both bring to the table, and is there a world that we can live in where maybe one moves inside, the other stays outside, the one that moves inside can play inside and outside based on personnel? To me, I believe that is something that can be done, and I think Trayvon Walker could be the guy that is the joker when it comes to being able to move around the front. Not only because physically he's the best blend of size, athleticism, and speed to be a guy that's a stand-up player on the edges while also being able to put his hand down and be a critical plugger on the inside as a 5 technique. But more importantly, I think is the way that they complement each other with Eric Armstead on the inside, because they both have the ability to get down with power in terms of beating their block at the line of scrimmage, because they flash enough power to work and win on second and third effort, and because they have the intelligence to understand how to set up defenders using a sequence of moves. Both of these guys have the ability to finish this season with 10 or more sacks. And if you see that where they both combine for like 25, it's going to be a great year in Cleveland because the pass rush is heating up. But the pass rush is nothing if you don't get the coverage behind it. And for me, the coverage should be vastly improved because Travis Hunter makes a move to become a full-time cornerback. Now, they haven't talked about it, but all the things, you read all the tea leaves, it sounds like he's going to be on defense a ton. And the one thing that I go back, because I went back and looked at this Colorado tape, super sticky in coverage, excels in matchups against high-level players because he's going to compete to the end. Well, when you think about the way this story is set up, it's challenging to see if he's going to be able to do it right away because he didn't get enough snaps as a rookie to know. And now we're saying, hey, he's going to be a full-time corner. He's going to be sticky. He's going to play more matchup zone, and we expect him to get his hands on the ball. All that could be true. But are we doing that with the expectation of him being the number one, or are we comfortable having multiple number twos on the field to be able to make this secondary kind of balance up and work with what Travis Hunter does as a full-time corner? Why I like it and why I like the supporting cast, Buster Brown is really coming to his own on the island. And even though they paid him shortly thereafter, we could talk about whether it's him or Brown as the number one. What I do know is those guys match up really well on the perimeter. And we talk about being a team that not only lines up and plays, spread them out, but to bring them in, you got to have the guys that can hold up on one-on-one so you can drop those extra safeties into the box to take care of the running game and dictate the terms to the opponent. Travis Hunter gives them one. I told you Buster Brown gives them another. But even in the nickel, they have two guys that can make it happen, Jarian Jones and Jordan Lewis. And even though they have similar games and identities and those things, vastly different players when it comes to how they play the game, how they see the game, how they process the game. How quickly can we get the young guy, Jarian Jones, to maybe supplant Jordan Lewis as the nickel, and maybe Nick Lewis moves to the dime, the bandit, where he comes in their 6 DB package and allows the younger player to play when they have 5 on the field. Well, the thing about Jones is I really saw his game shoot through the roof this year. And part of it was because in pregame, I would always see him and Lewis get together, and Lewis was almost acting as a player coach. Now, this wasn't always on game day, but this was leading up to those pivotal moments where Lewis would share. Now, on game day, I thought he was not only great pregame, like working those guys out and taking them through it, but the information that he shared with them in game was digestible, and they were able to make plays off of what he was able to suggest. So the veterans being in there certainly helps a revamped secondary, kind of. I say revamped, like Travis Hunter is going to start. So it's kind of revamped, but it's going to help a team that is trying to find its way in the rank in football, trying to find their way as a playoff contender. It's going to help them kind of find their identity because they have better rushers up front and the coverage is sticky. Now, here's the wild card that I'm going to give you, and it's not really a wild card because they had a great year last year, but Antonio Johnson. The reason why he is the wild card in terms of how they will play in the back end with better coverage is he is a guy that can play in the deep half as a safety, but he's also proven to be the big nickel, meaning when they go to the 3 safety look and they want a bigger player, a nastier player in the run game, well, that's when Antonio Johnson can drop down and come in. Well, not only does he help them in the run game, but I think he helps them being able to match up with tight ends in space. If you go all the way back and look at his tape at Texas A&M, he has always played the star position, which is that nickel position that I'm describing. But him now playing able to slide into that role with the Jags, it changes so many things about what they can do and how they can attack. And knowing Anthony and Campanile were there really trying to scratch this turnover obsession they have, man, you want more guys on the field that can do it. Antonio Johnson certainly can take it away. It's not only his versatility and adaptability in the back end where he can play the deep half, he can play quarters, but being able to come down, lock up with tight ends, being able to be the superior athlete against what are looking like the cathletes on that side. Antonio Johnson helps them, and he helps them at a time where they should be getting great performance and production from Travis Hunter, from Buster Brown. And if Jarian Jones and Jordan Lewis, one of them emerges as a consistent player in the nickel, man, this defense is cooking with gas. And it's one of the reasons why I believe the Jaguars are going to exceed that number that FanDuel Sportsbook put out there, plus 190 to win the AFC South. To me, I think the Kings continue to reign and win the South because, man, they are built solid from top to bottom. And even though the Houston Texans will give them a run for their money because defensively they have everything that you can want, I just think when it comes down to defense, give me the Jags over the Texans because they have shown their potential, and it's so easy to see what they can do in year 2. More explosive from offense, more consistent running game, and then better rush and coverage on defense. If they take care of those things, you can pencil the Jags in, not only as a playoff contender, but one of those teams that could be playing for it all come late January when we talk about which teams are going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. That's my take on it. That's my view, 30,000 view from above on what the Jags have going on with a few more weeks before they kick off training camp. Tune in, keep it locked to believe. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you check out what my colleagues are doing also within the Believe Network. It is fun to take a deep dive on your favorite team, and I'm really excited after doing a little research on the Jags. Let's see if they get this thing rolling in 2026. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks. This is the Bucky Brooks Show, and I'm out.